I'm so excited to be here. Thank you so much for the WikiTree crowd that are showing up from our usual live cast at 10. Hopefully we'll have more people come in from that. And also, hello to you people down in the Toronto DNA SIG. Happy to talk to you as well. Talk this morning is incorporating DNA results on WikiTree. And as Susan said, I'm Mags Galden of Grandma's Genes and mitowidedna.org. So the very first thing people want to know is, what is WikiTree? A lot of questions that I get asked is, isn't that over at Family Search? No. Family Search has a wiki style part of their site that answers questions about genealogy, and it's an incredibly good source for finding information about locations and stuff like that. But WikiTree is a single global family tree. Absolutely. And it's powered, as of this morning, by 912,268 volunteers from around the world. And all of us volunteers, and we call ourselves WikiTreers, we work to merge those duplicate profiles into one single ancestor profile. So if we have duplicate profiles pop up on WikiTree, that's one of the biggest projects that we have going, is the Arborist project. And our arborists work to make sure that if we've got lots of profiles that people aren't really aware of, that we work on keeping those profiles as one. So we merge them. We also work the good genealogy. People say, oh, if you go on WikiTree, people will change what you have, or, oh, WikiTree, well, I don't know about online family trees because, you know, they don't use sources. Well, I'll tell you what, WikiTree that's one of our focuses, is trying to find accurate sources. Now, years and years and years and years ago, a bunch of GEDCOMs got uploaded to WikiTree without a lot of good sourcing. Well, 3 times a year, we do a-thons, like the Source-a-thon, to work on nothing but sourcing or improving the health of WikiTree. So we work on improving those single profiles for accuracy with sources. And you can see here, I've got a list of sources that came with, let's see, I believe it would be one of my great-grandparents' profiles. And I have my DNA. Look at that. I have a DNA citation that goes to my cousins to prove my relationship, to prove my relationships genealogically and confirm those with genetics. Now, WikiTree, you can also improve profiles differently than you can at any other site. The profile is just a profile. All of the information you need to see is on one page. You don't need to jump around to 2 or 3 different, the facts or the timeline or whatever. You can put a timeline on a profile. You can put pictures into the profile. And this happens to be my adorable grandfather, Clee Hunt, or as we called him, TC. There's his cute little baby picture. Now, I have tried to get this to win the WikiTree photo of the week contest before, and it didn't win. I was devastated. So at some point in the future, I'm going to put that up again. But this is a cute picture of my grandfather. This is another cute picture of my grandfather with a couple of, or 3 of his siblings. An adorable picture of him when he was at Clemson University. And in 1908, a card from his grandfather giving his father congratulations on his birth. Now, I put these out at Thanksgiving because this one says Thanksgiving on it. So you can also do things with a biography, like tell the story. Like I have just information about the fact that he was born into a mill village in Greenville, South Carolina. Then he moved with his family into the deep back Appalachia woods of Walhalla, South Carolina, and he grew up there. I can also do things on his profile that you can't do on any other site. I can put things like an homage to him for his service in World War II. He was a troop transport commander and did 17 round trips of the Pacific. He was also in the U.S. Merchant Marines. He had to get that to be able to be a troop transport commander. So it was a lot of fun. He was also a 33-degree Freemason. So you can put a lot of information on profiles, and this is just a portion of his profile. I could tell bad stories on him too, but I wouldn't. With music, you can also add music to your profile. So literally, you could actually add a link to music. WikiTree has a great WikiTree playlist on Spotify. So if you go to Spotify, you're going to find a family history, genealogy associated music list. I think there's 17 or 18 hours, I don't know, 72 hours of music in that playlist. But you can also pick out that I put this beautiful picture of my grandfather there circled in blue, holding his cornet, which he played in the high school band. Now, I played that cornet all the way through university, and high school and middle school, I played that cornet as well. So isn't that a good way to tie that in? So you can add this kind of information to those profiles on WikiTree, and you can also add DNA. And that's why we're here this morning. We're here to talk about DNA. We can do this all collaboratively. And like I said, those 912,000 volunteers are global, worldwide, lots and lots and lots of people on WikiTree from all over the world. So it's free. A lot of people say, well, how does WikiTree stay up and running if it's free? How can they do that? Well, if you are a non-WikiTreer and you arrive at a WikiTree profile because you've done a search for an ancestor and it shows you that there's a WikiTree profile. So you go, excuse me, you go from Google over to WikiTree, you're going to see ads from other companies that have an interest in genealogy. And those ads will appear to you as long as you are not a member of WikiTree. Once you become a member, you don't see those ads at all. I actually find it kind of strange when I go into WikiTree when I haven't signed in and I do see ads. I'm like, wait, what is that? That is a weird thing. No, that shouldn't be on there. But they are. So those ads are what fuel WikiTree's economic survival. WikiTree and DNA. Now, DNA has become such a big tool in our genealogist toolkit. It is not something that can prove anything unless you're working with really deep big Y testing or full sequence mitochondrial DNA testing where you don't have a heteroplasmy playing in, or you have a lot of good information and a good genealogy. You can do stuff with WikiTree with DNA that might be proven or be written up in a scientific paper. But for genealogy, we're not working to prove the genealogy or disprove the genealogy with DNA, which it can help to do that. We are working more to confirm it. And a confirmation is just confirming that we've done the due diligence as good genealogists to provide good genealogy for the DNA and vice versa. So really quick, for the people who aren't familiar with WikiTree, it's very easy to get started. You just click on the Get Started button here and follow the instructions. There's several different levels of membership, and you can become a guest, you can become a family member, or you can become a wiki genealogist. And all of us have one thing in common. When you join WikiTree, we read through our 9-point honor code, and this is what gives us all the rules and regulations for the entire site. We collaborate, we share ancestors and work together on the same ancestor profiles. So when you join WikiTree, you understand that you're going to be working collaboratively. We care about accuracy. We're always aiming to improve the accuracy and fix mistakes of our great big old shared family tree. Number 3, we know that mistakes are inevitable, and we assume that mistakes are unintentional. And we work with other people to try and be collaborative and fix those mistakes and help others learn about the sourcing that might show why something was a mistake. We know that understandings are inevitable, and we try to minimize them by being curious. Chris Whitten, who is the WikiTreer in chief, he's the CEO and grand poobah of WikiTree, he says that he wants WikiTree to be the most polite family tree there is. That sounds good. We respect privacy. We privacy protect anything we think our family members might not want public. And if that's not enough for somebody, WikiTree will delete any personal information that somebody has an issue with. We respect copyrights. We don't knowingly copy full books into WikiTree. We do what people are supposed to do. We give a blurb or a sentence with a link off to it that is in the context of what we might be writing within a thesis or a profile biography. We also give credit. A lot of genealogy isn't copyrighted, and when we are working with a family history that's not copyrighted or information like that, we work to try and pop in the information that is correct for that researcher and to give them credit for the work that they've done. We build our information on the people who built that information before us, and we understand that that's important. We cite sources. Without sources, you can't objectively resolve any conflicting information, any. And the ninth one is we're united in a mission to increase the world's common store of knowledge, and we respect copyrights, privacy, but we keep information as free and open as possible, which is a really good thing. It's a really good thing. There's also great help pages on how to use WikiTree. You see down there at the bottom. I've got the link to these things, so I don't have a problem with anybody doing a screenshot of any of the information that I have up, so you can grab those links. WikiTree is free and open. A lot of this information you will find by going to WikiTree and looking underneath the help drop-down menu that is always at the top of every page on WikiTree. So if you need to do a screenshot, go ahead. Interesting thing on this page on help how to use WikiTree, one of the biggest things over the right, there's an introduction to WikiTree video by Ottawa's own Lee Ann Cooper. She's done some great videos for WikiTree, so if you go over there and you check it out, I don't know how many people here actually know that, but I love watching her videos. Compared to my voice, she's very calm and soothing and goes through her stuff at a very particular rhythm. And yeah, you just want to sit back and drink a glass of wine and maybe smoke a cigar and listen to Leanne's stuff. There's also great information in the help on how to use WikiTree, how to get started. If you have a GEDCOM, how to use the GED compare. WikiTree doesn't actually take GEDCOM uploads. What we do is we take your GEDCOM and we compare it to other profiles that are already existing on WikiTree instead of dumping a whole bunch of duplicate profiles, that kind of thing. So there's a great help that you can find. Like I mentioned, there are 3 levels of membership. The guest level, that's people that are just over checking things out. You don't have to do much. You just, you can just check things out, literally. Family members who want to communicate with cousins or exchange genealogy information, but aren't sure they want to help grow our tree, that's fine. WikiTree is incredible with cousin bait. I can count on my hand the number of people I met real live in person before I joined WikiTree, and the amount of people that I've met real live in person that are cousins, blood related cousins to me, has grown exponentially since I joined WikiTree 10 years ago. 10 years ago. Then the next level is a WikiTree genealogist who are collaborative and work together on the increasingly accurate single family tree that is WikiTree. And again, you see the 100% free for everyone forever. There are never going to be premium memberships. And they've actually done the due diligence. We have server space bought for months in advance so that if something were to happen to the leadership of WikiTree it would be able to continue without having a leadership system in place while a new leadership system was put into place. And there is information and a way to make that happen as well. So there's lots of things that have been done to protect the fact that WikiTree will be open and free. Privacy, the second biggest question besides how do I collaborate, is what's privacy on WikiTree? How do you do privacy on WikiTree? Well, every profile on WikiTree has an independently managed privacy level and trusted list, and you can see that by looking at this little button at the top right hand side. Now this is for my particular profile, and I have it set to this, which makes my family tree and my biography open, but it protects things like my siblings' names don't appear for public searches of WikiTree. If you were on my trusted list, or if you were a profile manager on my profile, you would be able to see all of that information through the private view of that profile. But for right now, it protects the people that should be protected, my family members who are not a part of WikiTree. So that's where you see it, the little lock symbol up in the upper right-hand corner, and you can also change that information by clicking on the privacy tab, which will take you to this page, which gives you all of the different levels of privacy on WikiTree, and I'll run through them really quickly. Unlisted is for people who absolutely aren't on WikiTree because they shouldn't be on WikiTree. Maybe they were a part of WikiTree or added to WikiTree before the GDPR, the General Data Protection Regulation that came through for the EU. Since that happened, profiles that were of living people, they're always unlisted unless they're a WikiTree member and they personally have signed into WikiTree and created their own profile. Private, that is for anybody that is maybe not living, maybe recently passed away, that you want to do some extra protections on their privacy. Private with a public biography gives people access to see just the biography on the profile, but not a lot of other information. Private with a public family tree is, instead of having the biography open, you have people's access to the generations back from that person. You can see that. And the way I have mine listed, and it is the way you must have your profile's privacy level set in order to have the WikiTree DNA functions work, is the private with public biography and family tree. That lets people read my biography. It lets people get into my family tree, doesn't let them see my siblings' names. The public level there is for any profile beyond the recently dead. For me, when somebody passes away, I go ahead and make all of their information public. Some family members, for some of the individuals, say, no, I'd rather not do that. Let's keep him closed for maybe 50 years or 20 years or whatever. But anybody beyond, I believe it's 75 years, all of those profiles are open automatically. So you would have to have an open profile. Adding your DNA test information. So now at 20 minutes in, we can move along and find information about adding your DNA test information to WikiTree, and it's pretty simple. WikiTree has these drop-down menus. I already mentioned that the help menu is at the top of every WikiTree page. Well, this is kind of the WikiTree navigation menu, and it is available at the top of every WikiTree page. The My WikiTree menu deals with my information specifically, you know, on WikiTree when I am, and then the Golden 7 menu deals with my profile and information connected to my profile, like compact tree, cousin base. But if you scroll down to about the 5th one, you see DNA. If I scroll down to that and click on it, it will take me to my DNA dashboard, as you were, and it immediately shows a DNA ancestors view for Mags Golden. Since I have entered in my DNA test information, it will show this beautiful chart. It shows my mother, my father, and my grandparents, and it shows how I've inherited, whether I've done a DNA test yet or not. It'll show me how I might inherit DNA from all of these individuals, from my mother X, from my grandmother X, from my grandfather X, from my father's mother X, from my father X, and then mitochondrial DNA only through the mother's line. I don't have Y DNA, so obviously I don't have a Y DNA line to show here from my father. But it also shows how the autosomal DNA test information. And if you're new to DNA and you don't quite get that, if you can't understand that, this is a great diagram for those people who want to see how those tests are inherited. Now, the DNA Ancestors tab, which is the one we're on, also has more information, but I'm going to point out that there are tab menus sometimes, and these are sub menus that are listed at the top of a page, but usually underneath what the title is for the page. And the DNA tab menus are above the text information, and they allow you to navigate to specific areas like your family tree or your family tools and tips and things like that. So in this case, we're going to the DNA test sections, which is this one right here, for how to add a DNA test. And when you get here, and it's different, you have to go through it through your WikiTree DNA ID menu because it's relevant to you specifically. So all I have to do is click on this drop down, and it shows me all the possible DNA tests that I could upload information about, not data. WikiTree does not take raw DNA data. What WikiTree does is you tell WikiTree what kind of test you've taken. And in this instance, I want to put in an ftDNA mitochondrial DNA test. And then I'll fill in all of this information, like my haplogroup information, what kind of test type it was. It was a full sequence. I would put in my mitowydna.org ID because there's some integrations between WikiTree and mitowydna that I want to do. If this was an autosomal test, I would put in my GEDmatch ID because there's an integration between GEDmatch and WikiTree. And I also put in my ftDNA kit number, which really isn't useful when you're on ftDNA site itself. But if you join WikiTree's DNA group projects in any way, then the only identifying information that connects to you is your kit number. So if I'm looking at an ftDNA DNA group project list of results, it's not going to list my name, but it will list my kit number. And so that's one way to try and figure out who it is in the DNA group project. If you're working with a DNA group project on WikiTree, which we'll talk about in a minute, that's another good thing. So once I've done that, I can fill in some information about what kind of information this is. So I did this DNA test to determine or confirm or prove the parentage of my grandmother. This is the very first DNA test I ever took. So I click on add test, and that will add my DNA test information. Because I already have entered that information, I get this info, hey, warning, kind of, hey, caution. Anytime you do something on WikiTree that makes WikiTree say, whoa, wait, that's something weird, you're going to see this big yellow bar pop up that is a cautionary bar that says, hey, like in this case, you can't add another ftDNA test for Mags because she's already got one in there. So I let this come up so that you guys could see what that kind of information, if you see this bar pop up, read it. And there's usually a reason why you're seeing it, and go back and fix whatever it is or find whatever the issue might be. The other things in there are DNA Ancestors, DNA Descendants, DNA Confirmation, and Golden DNA. So WikiTree and DNA, filling in the limbs. You can add your DNA information to WikiTree. Hey, I took an autosomal DNA test. But WikiTree won't be able to fill in all of that information about you on an ancestor's profile unless you have your limbs filled in back to some connection on WikiTree. So adding that information to WikiTree is really easy. There's that link up there above. And it's simple. You just go in and you just start adding information. You click on a submenu and you hit edit, and you can actually go in and fill in the name, the dates, and you could write up the biography, and you can use wiki markup to write up that biography. And there's examples over on the right about how to do that. So adding new family members is step by step. You add your parents, you add your siblings, your spouse, your children, your grandparents, your great-grandparents, you fill those in. And as you make those connections back, you're going to end up eventually getting back to somebody who's already on WikiTree. And you just want to connect to them. Collaboration. So that's the other thing. The big question is, how do I work with collaboration on WikiTree? WikiTree has a great help menu for collaboration. And really what collaboration is all about is being able to communicate and to talk to each other and to be good genealogists. We used to, back in the old days, we would kind of hoard all of our information and not let any information out because we wanted to publish a book or to publish a family history. Well, that's changed. There's a huge paradigm shift in genealogy from that kind of keeping everything close to your vest to actually sharing and realizing that meeting a cousin who knows something about their genealogy can tell you a lot about your genealogy sometimes. And above all, the biggest thing is that we know that there could be issues, and because we all work on one profile for every individual. So close family members collaborate on modern family history, distant cousins collaborate on shared genealogy, and ultimately the entire world collaborate on the single global family tree. And collaboration takes us back to all of the elements of the honor code. In communication, collaboration, you could put the word in a mathematical sentence with it. Collaboration equal communication. And communicating is important. Before the talk today, Susan and I were talking about a good way to let a profile manager know that you want to add information to a profile. You don't have to call and say, hey, I want to add this information. Do you mind? You just leave a message in the comment section of a profile and say, hey, I have this information, blah, 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 or yada, 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 and write it out a bit and then go ahead and add that information. If it comes back later that there's an issue with a source that maybe Susan wanted to add, then the profile manager might put that information into a research notes section and say, you know, a few months ago, Susan added this to the profile, but in the research that we've been doing, we have found that there's a new source that supersedes the information in the source that Susan has. But if you have that information on the profile, you're going to see that there might be an issue with a source. So it's good. That's collaboration. That's communication. That isn't somebody saying, hey, Susan is an idiot. She's not an idiot. Susan is so not an idiot. Susan is not an idiot. Okay. But it keeps that kind of conversation from happening. It's professional. It's courteous. You know, it's courteous. So it's polite. So misunderstandings are inevitable, and WikiTree understands that. And they have created a problems with members process where if you are having a disagreement over something, there's steps to follow, like finding the question in the disagreement, not where you're calling each other names or getting into big disputes like that, but actually looking at what the reason is for the disagreement. And a lot of times that disagreement is going to be over sources. And what can you do when you have a disagreement over a source? You can go to our genealogist to genealogist forum, that's G2G. You can talk it out. You find the question in the disagreement and you talk it out. And if you can't arrive at an agreement, you can take it to the community and you can post a question to the community to get the community input. There are a lot of genealogists who follow our G2G forum who do nothing every day but watch for people asking questions, and they run out and do research to answer questions, asking if people had information on my Templetons, and somebody may have come back with information on my Templetons. So it's really great. The GDG is also a good place to find out information, like if there's a scheduled outage, and obviously it's Saturday, so this isn't a current posting, but new way to request red categorization. Jimmy Fadden as the challenge host. Other ways of doing that. And I want to add military history. Somebody's not knowing how to add military history to a profile, or unable to find a JEDCOM info from a JEDCOM to a tree. Excuse me. Someone wanting to know information about our JED compare process. And people will go through and give you good answers for this stuff. And that's a part of the dispute resolution process. The problem with members is taking the question to the collaborative group and getting more information. And that process even goes further, and you can get better information from a mentor, or even if you don't agree after that, you can go to a mediation, and then the mediation council. So there's lots of ways for that process to go. But G2G, those people in G2G, I think sometimes are just crazy. Anyone working on relatives with the last name Perron, and Perron is a good Canadian name. So obviously there's some good answers going on there. You can structure G2G to give you a feed based on your likes. So you see I've got up here tags followed, British home children. We have a British home child in our family. Some of my surnames, Compton, Crisp, Dillard. I'm obviously interested in DNA, so I add that as one of my tags. And UEL is also an Ontario project leader. So there's lots of tags that you can put in, and the information that comes up in your GDG feed will be based on those tags. So Canada's project year in review, we have a great, very active Canadian project. So that obviously pops up in my feed. DNA related questions and project leaders, updates and news and suggestions. So you can have different ways to work with G2G beyond the conflict resolution. It is really about genealogists helping genealogists. So connecting to existing ancestors, that's going back to adding and connecting family to existing ancestors. So as you add your family back, you're going to end up connecting to the greater tree when you come upon that profile of your great 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 grandfather who is already on WikiTrees. So you just build your family lines back until you actually get them connected. And all of this to say that you have to get your information into WikiTree before WikiTrees DNA will work. This is the profile for my John James Galden, and he is my great-grandfather. And you can see that there's a James Dempsey Galden here with DNA confirmed right next to it. That's a little DNA confirmed checkbox, and I'm going to show you a little bit about that. When you're adding your family limbs, you can go into the edit from the profile page, and you'll get this information where you can fill in the names. Now, my great-grandfather actually went by the name John James. That was how he was called. So that's why he has a double name, but you usually don't have a double name showing up in the actual fields. Over to the right, you see that there are some status information there. So James Dempsey Galden, I can mark him as non-biological if he was my adopted, if he was, the family member was adopted. I can mark him as uncertain, as somebody that I need to do more research on, but you really should have your research ducks in a row when you're adding profiles to WikiTree. I can mark him as confident that there's lots of proof out there in genealogical work, but I can also mark him as confirmed with DNA by clicking on this radio button. I can do the same thing with his mother. I can't because I don't have the DNA confirmation to prove that. And then I can also go down on the right and add siblings and add information like sources. So this is the actual, actually there's a newer version of this, but this is kind of what the Y-DNA confirmed citation looks like. And you can see that there are other things that I've added for sources. I don't consider Find a Grave a source. And I usually put it up in the body of the profile, and I say, you may find more information on his Find a Grave. Fortunately for him, he has a good Find a Grave, and it's well sourced. So WikiTree and DNA, we already very quickly talked about the fact that I could go into this edit and I could make this DNA confirmed, and that I have to have a citation to make that DNA confirmed. The biggest thing is when I enter in my DNA test information, when I say that I tested for autosomal DNA, you can see I've got an autosomal DNA listed. All of this information will show up in the DNA connections list over on the right-hand side of the profile, of every profile. And the DNA connections list shows Earl Galden, which is my dad. I have permission to use him, but he also is a WikiTree member. So his name, I don't need to privatize his name. I don't need to privatize any of the information for a profile on WikiTree that is open for people to see. Because when we join WikiTree, we want to share that information. We want to make it publicly available. So here's my dad's Y-DNA test. And you can see that he's got his information listed for his haplogroup. This is going to be changing soon after I get his big Y test back. But you can also see that there's some other DNA matches down here. I can also open up all of the DNA matches for our earliest known ancestor and show you that there are quite a few tests for him. There's actually another Y tester, but genealogically, we haven't been able to connect the Y tester to our earliest known ancestor. There's a little bit of a question mark there. There's a dispute between researchers actually as to how a specific part of that our family connected. So once that gets resolved, we'll be able to put another Y tester up here. But you can see that there are a lot of other testers listed as autosomal testers. And if you are researching a person, if you're researching John Galding of New Kent County, Virginia, you could put that name into a Google search and see all of the DNA connections. And that's kind of how WikiTree does things different from anybody else. If you go to another DNA site and you want to find information about a DNA ancestor, you just get a list of descendants without them being very well connected to their earliest known ancestor, or they haven't even put that information in. They haven't even listed their earliest known ancestor, or they haven't even connected a family tree. With WikiTree, I can go to John Galding Jr.'s profile and I can see all of the DNA testers right there who say they have a genealogy trail to him. That's different from everybody else. I think that that's a great way to do it, is to land on a profile and seeing a bunch of people. And because WikiTree is the way it is and the integrations that they have done, I can go to my dad's information. I can click on that T10001 and click compare, or I can just click on that one item and I can go straight over to myDNA.org and look at my dad's page. Obviously, this is not a whole list of his markers, but you can see publicly that my dad has all 111 markers. You can see who his earliest known ancestor. You can see that I have connected him to WikiTree. I've also connected GEDmatch to this profile. Yes, to a Y-DNA profile. On GEDmatch, you can get a results list. And if somebody has a mitoydna.org profile for their Y or mitochondrial DNA, you can click on that and go from GEDmatch's autosomal information straight to somebody's Y or mitochondrial information, kind of like a one-stop shop for both. So we link over from mitoydna to GEDmatch, and they do the same with us. So this is the information that you would see. I could also click on the compare, and I could go down the list of Y-DNA testers on a profile and click the compare button and come up with this box and add in information, and then click on the compare button, and it would take me to a comparison on mitoydna of that Y-DNA information. This happens to be to Gail French's family, and you can see that there's a lot of DNA connections. It lists how many test level the person has done, and also shows in bright yellow when there is a difference, when a difference happens, when a mutation has happened on that line. For GEDmatch, you can do the same thing. You can click on the number, and it will bring up a complete list of the information for that autosomal DNA test. You can click on compare, and you can compare 1 or 2 people. On mitoydna, you could do, I think, up to 20 comparisons of DNA testers. But for GEDmatch, you can only do 2, because if you could do 3, then you could actually do a triangulation, and I don't know why they don't do that, but you can't compare more than 2 testers 1-to-1. And that would bring up my dad and myself. Thankfully, it shows that I am related to him very closely. Yeah, my dad says, yeah, you're finding all the secrets. And I'm like, yeah, but there aren't any fun secrets in our family to find. Dad, you're boring. So yeah, my dad is my dad. So some of the features beyond what shows up on our profile pages on WikiTree, going back to the drop-down menus, if you click on DNA, you get taken to the DNA ancestors view for me, which we looked at before with the great diagram showing how you might inherit that DNA, and also showing DNA confirmed, where I've done the work to confirm those matches. But also I can see a direct line of mitochondrial DNA back to my earliest known ancestor, who is Anne. I can also see a Y chromosome straight line back. I also have a version of this on my profile, and I'll show you that in a minute. But something you don't see on any other site, is you can look at all of your xDNA tested connections and see where you might want to do some work to test some of your xDNA to try and find out more information about them. I have a couple of holes here at my 5th great grandfather range here, but I've done a pretty good job of filling in all of my information. The page tab menus, we go back, we go from the DNA test ancestors to the DNA descendants list. Now, I have descendants that I'm not going to list, and they aren't, everybody knows that I have 3 kids. They aren't my biological kids, but I claim them, but I can't list them because they're not my biological kids. I have them listed on WikiTree, privatized, but they're non-biological. So what I really want to do is go to somebody back in the ancestors list to give you an idea. So I've gone back to my dad's earliest known male descendant, and I've shown how the family line comes down to my dad. And it gives you a really cool way to mark it out. And you can see all the people in the family tree that have DNA confirmations. But if there are other living descendants in that line, you will see on WikiTree that they have DNA tested, and you will see what kind of tests they've done. So it gives you a really good overview of the people that could be possible testers for more information on your DNA. And of course, we have the DNA tested information that when we went in and added the DNA test at the beginning, this is what it looks like once you've added a couple of DNA tests. It'll give you your information for Y and mitochondrial or autosomal there. You can also go to the DNA confirmation information. So this is a way for me to see how many confirmations I've actually been able to work on WikiTree. Obviously, I've been able to do my dad's Y DNA line back a good way. And if I click this button, I could go back even further. I have DNA confirmations that I have not been able to confirm for these earliest individuals here, or some of these. Like I haven't confirmed my Macamoyles. If you know any Macamoyles, send them my way, because I need to, they're hard. My Macamoyles dotted out, so I don't have any Y DNA to do for them. I would love to find some Y DNA that are related to my specific Macamoyles. So, and supposedly the ones over in Eastern or Western Ontario are related to me. That's supposedly the father of my great-great-great-grandfather, my brother of my great-great-great-great-grandfather. So you get a lot of good information about the DNA testing, what you've been able to do as far as confirmations. And I've done quite a bit, but there's more that I could do. There's more that I could do, but because I'm a genealogist and a professional genealogist, my information may not be as good because I don't have time to work on my stuff. There's also this cool one, this tab over to the far right. Now for you, Bob Butler, it would show up as Butler DNA, or Kathy Nava, it would show up as Nava DNA, or Susan Courage's would show up as Courage DNA, or, you know, if Chris Ferriello is really hanging out with us today, it would show up as Ferriello DNA over there to the right. You click on that and it gives you a list of all the earliest known connections. So there's 486 DNA test connections to people named Galden. And you can limit the display by the test company or the kind of test, or even you can even do it by birth. But here is a woman who has DNA ancestors listed over here to the right. So myself and this other guy, Al, and my dad. But this list goes on and on and on. I can go down and I can look at Alexander, and it lists all of the ancestors alphabetically to the right, or I could list it by test takers. But there's lots of DNA test takers over here on the right, which could give me a hint, again, as to how I could find other DNA testers to do that work. And this is some really incredibly great information that other companies just don't give you. You know, we're pointing you to people that you might be able to look at to get tested. Let's see. Back to the confirmations and citations, which are so important to genealogy. We want to make sure that not only are we doing good work, but that we're citing our good work and we're confirming that work with citations. So with the DNA confirmation citation, I don't know of any other site that gives you step-by-step help and information in how to do a citation for DNA. And I don't think a lot of people really understand that they have to have a citation for that. That's another piece of information that we want to add to our work. And if we're going to talk about how we've worked the DNA, we need to have a citation for that. Have I mentioned that we need a citation for DNA? We do, we need that. So WikiTree has a great way. It goes through steps on how to do it. Does confirmed mean proven? 3 DNA matches with incomplete genealogy connections. Gives you several different ways to look at it. Parent-child relationships confirmed with DNA. It actually gives you all of the background and why you may want to do it a certain way. And not only does it give you how it's done, but it tells you about how to do those confirmed statuses over there on the side of the page, these to say father is non-biological uncertain. It talks about that and why you want to do that, and how those DNA confirmation work together with traditional genealogy. And then it actually works you through the steps on which instructions should you follow for creating that DNA confirmation. So do you have a match? So we do these if and questions. If not, go to, do you know your relationship? If so, do this. If not, do this. Are you using autosomal DNA? If so, do this. If you've done Y DNA, do this. If you've done X DNA or mitochondrial DNA, go to this area. So it really gives you specific information on how to do things all the way through all of the process, and then how to mark those as confirmed and how to add a source citation. There's several different ways that you do it, but they all belong in the sources section. And WikiTree even has a great citation maker that Greg Clark put together, which was a lot of fun to work in the beta testing for this. But you can go in and have WikiTree based on your WikiTree information. Once you fill in those lines, you can go through and get WikiTree to create the citation for you. Is it a simple DNA match? Is it, and that would be autosomal. Is there a triangulation match, autosomal? Is there an X DNA match? Is there a Y DNA match? Is there a mitochondrial DNA match? And then the program actually goes through and auto-populates all of the citation information for you. And you get this nice, beautiful citation that you can just cut and paste straight into a profile. There's also, there's a, a link off to it showing all the WikiTree apps from Greg Clark. Let's see, the surnames generator, the EKA finder. I'm going to talk about these two here in just a minute, but I'm going to close that back out. Let's get rid of that. All right, so there's a link to that, and you've got the link down underneath as well. Categories, working DNA in categories. Now, I have found working WikiTree's category system has been really important. Categories is a way to use WikiTree's database abilities to bring focus to something that you're working on. For me, I have genetic genealogies, South professional genealogy, US, Canada, South Carolina, Ontario. I've always been a member of the Arborist Project, helping to merge those profiles. I work on the DNA project. I got WikiTree leaders. I got the Templeton name study listed in the US Southern Colonies Project, but I'm an active WikiTreer. So I'm listing a lot of the projects that I have an interest in that also people can find me easily. If they're looking for a professional genealogist in Ottawa, they can find me because of the categories. So you kind of get an idea of how the categories work. They're like a lot like tags, except that for my dad's profile, I can put in his location, Lawrence, South Carolina, Greenville, South Carolina, United States Army, Korean War, where he was in the Army during the Korean War. He's an architect. I can add that. I can add his haplogroup RM269 to that. And I can put in Y DNA and create a Y DNA haplogroup RM269 category for him. And add him to a list with other people who are also in the category and with some of the subclades for the category. Now, my dad right now is just RM269. Unfortunately, and I say unfortunately because RM269 is 47% of the people in the world today. All males have that haplogroup. Once I get his Y information, his big Y done, I'll have a lot more specific focus on that. But for right now, WikiTree can give me focus because I can go in and look at all of the other people on WikiTree who have identified themselves as a member of that RM269 project. And I can start looking down for some of the locations to see if I can find people that I might want to test that might match my dad's locations as well. It's hard to do with such a high level project, but with mitochondrial DNA, I can do this with mitochondrial DNA for my earliest known ancestor. And with mitochondrial DNA, we have a big issue. And the issue is that we live in a patrilineal society, meaning that we only follow the husband's surname. So for WikiTree, I can put in her haplogroup information into a category system, and I can bring up all the people who match me on WikiTree who also have this haplogroup. And this is the overall haplogroup. So I see a bunch of people, but I also see a lot of things that are coming into focus for me, that the majority of these people live along the Appalachian Mountains. I can also create a group category for me for just the people who have matched me. So I go to FTDNA, I look up the earliest known ancestors for the testers who match me. I enter the earliest known ancestor information on WikiTree, add this category, and I absolutely see some relevant information. These people are all from a specific area of Appalachia, and it's all related to my family. So I can use WikiTree's categories to get me there. There's also categorization for projects, and there are also group projects. FTDNA has provided a group project system for people who have similarities, say haplogroups or surnames. Or we were talking earlier about Lynn's family. She's got an unusual STR result, and so she's now a part of that project. So they have a great system for projects. And the one thing that has fallen flat since the GDPR came in is that the system that we used to have to be able to put our charts or our lineages and all of that has kind of gone away because people didn't want to have that much information available. So that stopped. World Family Net stopped. But WikiTree is free, it's accessible, and people can create DNA group project companion pages to the DNA group projects over at FTDNA. And I've done this for the Templeton project. So I can have great charts on there. I can have information. I can do a haplogroup chart to show how the haplogroups flow through the project. I can create a chart to show the earliest known gateway ancestors for my Templetons and show how they are all related or not related. Actually, working on this has shown me where to do testing for more of my Templetons, and we've been able to prove that James, David, and Robert are all brothers. And that's just happened in the last year and a half or so. So you can, by visualizing some of this information and finding other testers on WikiTree, you can really move information forward. Roberta Estes also has her DNA group project linked over, and this is a great chart that I did for her well, she already had it done, I just made it pretty. So there you go, so that she could put that up on WikiTree. There's also a great way to check the relationship between you and somebody else to see if there really is. And I can check my relationship between myself, my dad, and his earliest known ancestor. DNA sharing and cousin bait. If you know somebody that matches your DNA, that knows their genealogy, they can tell you a lot about your genealogy and your DNA. And to do this for me, I put stuff up on my profile so that people can find my information. I don't have to send a lot of emails back and forth to people when they call me and ask me, hey, what are your surnames? I just say, hey, go check out this link, and that'll give you enough information. So this goes back to all of my earliest known ancestors for each surname, and it's divvied up by my maternal line and my paternal line. I keep that on my profile, and I just send people to that. That is from Greg Clark's surname generator, that little program, and you can just take that information and post it. There's also the earliest known ancestor generator that he did, which gives a list all the way back and shows the DNA confirmations for both my Y line and my mitochondrial line. And you can also share your family tree and tools on Facebook by clicking a simple button. It'll give you information, and you could post that quickly and easily to your social media. And I love how they put this. Here are ways to lure other Galden descendants to WikiTree. That's funny. Like I'm riding around or walking around the city with watches in my coat. Hey kids, I've got a candy here. So yeah, there's lots of stuff, lots of great information, and it's all about collaboration. Kind of sped up there at the end because we're at 59 minutes now for my presentation, so we're just about done. Thank you so much for watching.